Yo, 2013 Ford Fusion. I think I'm gonna bore everybody to death with another brake job video. These new fan-fangled Fords, they have some confusing origins now. They're not entirely American, like most Ford tards would think. Some of it's made in Mexico. Some of it's made in Germany. I found something that's made in the USA. Some of it's missing. I've been looking for some China somewhere, but I haven't found any yet. I got some rusty old rotors in the rear, and the pad's down to about nothing, and I don't think that's right. The front brakes are pulsating really good, and if I look down here, I'm just under 3 millimeters on this outboard pad. The brake fluid looks cheesy enough to be replaced. So I'm going to try to pull in all these calipers and make sure they're good and replace all the pads and rotors and do a brake fluid flush. I suppose I'll start by making sure these rear calipers are okay. There's a plug on this bleeder screw, and this is an 11 millimeter or a 7/16. I'm just going to crack it loose just a little bit, and I should see some fluid coming out of this thing. I'm just going to close it by hand. There's a metal clip on the front of the thing I'm going to want to take off. I can just get a screwdriver in here and pop that out. There's some plastic caps on the back of these I want to take off. 7 millimeter Allens. I got those 2 Allen bolts out, so this caliper should just slide out of the way. Now that I have this caliper all flopped upside down, I can loosen this bleeder screw. I'm going to put a hose on here so it goes into a pan and doesn't make too much of a mess. I'm just doing this so when I pull this piston in, the fluid goes out of the caliper and doesn't go back up into the system. It's just a good idea to do since I'm bleeding this system out anyways. I got this little Harbor Freight rear caliper tool. It's got a bunch of adapters for it. You got to find the right one. This one's got a number 6 on it. There's 2 little grooves that the pins go in. It's like a 7/8 or a 22 millimeter nut here. I can just turn this in, and you got to screw this clockwise while you push the caliper in. And sometimes too, these dust boots, they get a little sticky, and if they do, you just got to pull it back and put a little lubricant in here, like some penetrant or something, to keep them from doing that. This caliper seems to be turning in really nice, so I don't have to replace it. I think you can rent these tools too from a parts store or something if you don't want to buy one. You don't want to force these either. You just let the screws do the work. You don't want to get them too tight. That should be in all the way. For whatever reason, somebody put the inboard pad on the outboard on this side because that spring's supposed to be on the inside. So they had this backwards. And there's a pin here, and this one's wrong. You can see where it kind of spun wrong. See where the little tab is? That's not right. None of this was right. So this pin has to fit in this slot. So you want to make sure that these grooves are facing straight up and down, because this brake pad is going to fit right in that groove right there. I can close this bleeder off for now. It's upside down, so it might get a little air in the system, but it's not really going to matter at this point because I'm still going to gravity bleed it some more. Just going to kind of snug it down a little bit. I'm going to do the same to the other side and go off to the front and make sure all of that's okay. 150,000 miles looks pretty obvious. That's original brake fluid. Now I'm off to the front. I shouldn't have to do any of that monkeying around. I can take this cap off. This is a 9 millimeter. You might be able to get away with using a 6.3/8. Try not to break that bleeder. Put a hose on that. Now I'm just going to take a screwdriver and just stab it in here in between the front pad and the rotor and just pull it in real slow. And I should be able to get this piston to move. I'm just going to move the pad, pull that all the way in. That feels really nice. So I won't need to replace that caliper. Close this bleeder off and do the same to the other side. I normally want to suck out as much of that brake fluid as I can out of this reservoir, but I really can't because it's way back there. I have a 32-ounce bottle of DOT3 brake fluid. I'm just going to put that upside down and stick it right here, and hopefully that won't fall out. I'm just going to leave that in there like that. Now I just started those bolts just to hang this caliper so that bleeder screw's facing up in the correct location so no air gets into it. And I just opened up the rears, and I'm just going to let them gravity bleed out while I do the front brakes, and I'm going to leave these open until I get nice clean clear fluid. Now I can get this front clip off. I can just use a hook tool and just kind of get in here and pop this out. Same thing here on these caliper slides. Couple of plastic caps, couple of 7mm. I kind of try to push them sideways and turn and try to pull out at the same time just to kind of get the pins out of the way. I'm gonna flop it up top here like so. Got a couple of 18mm on these caliper support brackets. Looks like they got a little Loctite on them. They might be kind of a bear if you do them by hand. And I can just whack this rotor with a little hammer. Make sure there isn't any big rusty high spots on this ring, on this hub. That feels flat. This brake fluid's nice and clean on both sides. That actually went really quick, so I can close these bleeders back off. If you really want to get technical with bleeder screw torque, I would do the rears at 12 foot-pounds and the fronts at 9. Now as far as these brake rotors go, you want to get the grease and cosmoline off of these. These actually look really clean as it is. I just use a little brake cleaner. Might have to hit it a couple of times if they're really greasy. I just want to make sure there's no lint left on this thing from the rag. So any kind of lint can make noise on your brakes. Now I can get these old pads out of here. Oh, that's stuck really good. I want to make sure there isn't any high spots or rust. Any kind of high spots will give you a really horrible pedal feel. There's some gooey junk all over it. I don't know, like glue. I don't know what that is. I'm just going to try to file it off. That's nice and smooth. Looks like this rubber in here is dry, but I can pull these pins out and put a little silicone paste in here. Make sure those slide really nice. If they don't, sometimes there'll be rust, a lot of thick rust behind this rubber boot on the caliper, but they feel good, so I don't have to mess with any of that. And I'm going to put some little disc brake quiet on the contact surfaces, so the caliper piston here, and where the brake pad touches over here, that black junk that comes with your brake pads, that's the stuff. The inboard pad just snaps in. You want to put this one in first. Ooh. It's a little tight. I think they got a little carried away with the tightness on these, so I'm going to bend these in to match this one. That might work a little better. See if I want to go in the hole now. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. There's a right and a left pad with the wear indicator on here, and basically you want it on top because the wheel spins this way, and this side usually wears out faster because of the way the wheel's spinning. On the caliper support bracket, I can kind of see where the brake pads are touching. And I want to clean the surface really good. These style of caliper support brackets too, they usually make a huge dent right where the pads are always touching. That's pretty good enough. Now if I just take these and put them on here, I can make sure they slide really nice, and they actually don't. They're a little sticky. Probably have a little more rust on here I gotta get rid of. Sometimes if there's too big a dents in here from the wear spots in the pads too, they'll kind of be a little sticky, and you don't want that. You want them to slide really nice without it hanging up anywhere. Throw on my clean rotor. If you're actually trying to save these rotors too and get them machined, there's a screw hole in here you can stick a, I don't know, looks like 10125 bolt in there and screw it in, and it pulls this hat out. Well, it's supposed to anyways. Sometimes that don't work like it's supposed to. The manufacturer does not require any lubricant on these caliper support brackets, so I'm going to leave them dry. I can torque these down to 110 foot-pounds. I think the manufacturer says 111 foot-pounds. This outboard pad I can stick on there like that. 22 foot-pounds on these slide pins. Put the caps back on. I just want to move this and make sure nothing's hanging up. It slides super nice. I got these new clips I can put on here. Basically, I just want to go like that. Try to pry this in. Like so. And that's clicked in. And that feels really nice. Do the same to the other side. Now that my front brakes are done, I'm bleeding the fronts out while I do the rears. This should actually go really quick. That actually bled out really fast. I'm done. I got just a little bit left in this bottle. Just gonna tip it up, put the cap on. And that's it. It's really full, but as soon as I load up all the calipers, it should go right down to this max line right here. The caliper support bracket on the rear is 15 millimeter. These have a whole bunch of Loctite on them too. Now that I have the caliper support bracket off, I'm just going to clean up everything the same way and lube everything the same way that I did the front. There's a wear indicator for the rear on this. Normally these are about 2 millimeters, so if you got 2 millimeters left of pad, then these start squeaking and making noise because they hit the rotor. It looks like they got a new standard, so they can sell brakes a lot quicker. That wear indicator is about 4 millimeters. But anyways, I put this thing in here, and it's hitting the caliper support bracket, so that's not even right. Well, I don't know. The thing's kind of retarded, and I'm just going to try to grind a little bit of it off here. Maybe I'll get lucky and it'll work right. I got the new rotor on, and everything's cleaned and lubed. So I can torque these bolts to 65 foot-pounds. Now I can put the pads on. Same deal, inboard pads got the wear indicator. Rotor goes this way, so the wear indicator on this side needs to go on the bottom. Make sure the springy ding thing goes in the back. Same torque on these, 22 foot-pounds. Put my little black caps on. Sometimes these springs are a little funny and they don't fit as good as the factory ones. I put this one in first and I just kind of line this one up in the hole. Pull that around and pound them in. And I should be able to move this and they shouldn't pop out or anything. If they do pop out, then the springs you get with your kit are no good and you probably got to go to the dealer and get a good quality set. Sometimes they don't go in there real good. Do the same to the other side. Now that I've put everything together, it's absolutely crucial to go inside the car, pump the pedal up until it doesn't go up anymore, and hold it for about 30 seconds. Make sure none of the bleeder screws are leaking and make sure it doesn't bleed down at all. Brake level's perfect. And then when you get done doing that, you want to come out to your rears and you want to look at the rear caliper piston and make absolutely certain that it's butted up all the way up against the rear pad. Because if it's not, then that means that that pin isn't lined up with the piston. Then after you do that, you can put the tires on, torque them down to 100 foot-pounds, and drive it down the road. Be real light on the brakes. Go from 30 miles an hour and do a really slow stop from 30 to 0 a couple of times, and then take it down the freeway, hit the brakes a couple of times, and if you got no noises and everything's great, the pads are bedded in and you're all done. Okay, bye.